The air was thick with anticipation, a silent promise of battle hanging in the summer heat. The supermarket parking lot, ordinarily a mundane expanse of asphalt and painted lines, became the unlikely stage for a deeply societal drama. Amara Westfield, a confident black woman in her early 30s, held her head high against the scalding noon sun, her braided hair cascading over a vibrant orange t-shirt that swayed gently with her movement. She was a woman accustomed to standing out, but never imagined it would be like this. Two police officers, Officer Donnelly and Officer Rourke, approached with slow, measured steps. Their expressions were inscrutable behind dark sunglasses, but their hands hovered ominously near their holstered weapons. To any passerby, it might seem routine, a standard check. But routine wasn't the right word for what spilled into brutal reality seconds later. The air crackled with tension more intense than the midday sun as voices escalated, one defiant and full of rightful anger, the other authoritative, tinged with an edge that hinted at something unspeakable. "Hands where I can see them," barked Donnelly, his voice echoing across the pavement, startling the birds into frantic flight. The world seemed to pause, bystanders frozen in unwelcome anticipation. Amara's groceries lay scattered at her feet, apples rolling in lazy arcs, a testament to her nonviolent intentions. Her phone, blinking and alive, lay there too as silent witness, with unrecorded but crucial testimony. Why? Amara's voice was steady, grounded in the unfair familiarity with this dance, where existence itself was an act of resistance. "I haven't done anything wrong." Her words were met with the familiar silence of disbelief from those cloaked in blue, a script rehearsed too often within walls built on systemic injustice. Seconds stretched into eternity. Hearts raced, unspoken questions cut through the silence. Would today be her day? The day she became another name on a tragic list? Another story of injustice and lost promise? Her spirit fought against the weight of past and present, standing tall, knowing full well her worth, her value, and all that was at stake in this moment. It happened swiftly, too swiftly. A sound erupted that wasn't just a gunshot but a gauntlet thrown down at the feet of justice. She crumpled to the ground, her vibrant orange shirt now a deceitful contrast to the crimson spreading like a dreadful promise unfulfilled. The officers' faces held a stark coldness, a chilling testament to the broken system they embodied. Around them, reality conformed to a new order where injustice hid under the guise of security. Yet, in those precious seconds following, unseen gears were set into frantic motion, sparking a transformation that would sweep far beyond this cracked asphalt stage. 60 seconds later, as blood and disbelief mingled beneath a canopy of uncaring sky, the world shifted. Amara's phone, blinking insistently, was an unbroken tether to a different sphere of power, one that could pierce the brutality of this moment. The Pentagon moved, its subtle but inexorable might making its presence known. Unbeknownst to Donnelly and Rourke, their actions had set into motion a force as certain and encompassing as gravity, a force summoned by familial love and a strategic mind that refused to let Amara's story end like this. And so, across invisible lines of communication, the narrative began its shift. In those fraught minutes, while the officers stood their ground, an entity far removed from the insular world of this local precinct started rising. It was a distant roar, building a crescendo, destined to crash on shores of just a mighty wave, backed by the untold strength of a brotherhood that extended far beyond blood ties into the very fabric of national defense. Comments buzzed with outrage, disbelief spreading like wildfire through neighborhoods and homes as people rallied, clustering around screens that showed the unfolding tragedy. Messages of solidarity and cries for justice echoed in sudden unity, building into a chant that would not, could not, be ignored. It was as though the Pentagon itself had breathed with fresh resolve, its attention fixated on this small stage now lit by a spotlight not easily extinguished. For in those excruciating 60 seconds, the shot fired had traversed more than mere space. It had spoken to the very core of what needed change. With each tick of the relentless clock, the inevitability of justice grew clearer, propelled by a promise that lives mattered, that Amara mattered. And as the scene from the parking lot cut abruptly across screens worldwide, it echoed a challenging question: what would be different this time? How would the echoes of this tragedy redefine justice and accountability? For in that moment, and in each moment thereafter, she was not just Amara Westfield, but a powerful symbol, a clarion call to action for all who dared to witness and feel. Amara lay on the asphalt, her breathing shallow, as her blood-painted stories long overlooked by a society accustomed to indifference. Eyes that had once sparkled with bold aspirations now stared unseeing toward a sky that seemed equally oblivious to her plight. Objects moved around her in a blur, figures both foreign and familiar, their outlines fringed with the halos of panic and confusion. The officers' voices clashed with her fading consciousness, starkly cutting against the unreal calm of her existence's edge. They believed they'd done their duty, anchored in a narrative where their perspective took precedence over the humanity they quelled. But Amara's defiance lived on, igniting a spark that refused to be snuffed out by systemic injustice or individual disregard. The world, unwittingly tuned in, watched the streams and clips that continued to mushroom across social media platforms, bearing witness to a horror that too often simmered beneath the surface before boiling over into headline tragedy. There was anger, searing and righteous, finding its footing among ordinary people galvanized into collective outrage. Amara was no longer just a name, linked tidily to insidious patterns of brutality. She was an emblem of otherness, a poignant reminder of sameness that transcended divides. From screens vibrant with indignation, the message spread, resonating most prominently in the rhythmic pulse of Washington, D.C. Inside the labyrinthine corridors of power, an unofficial code had been tapped, demanding immediate deciphering by those attuned to its frequency. Within the controlled hum of the Pentagon, noted figures stirred with measured urgency. Among them was Major General Quinn Westfield, positioned at the dual crossroads of familial ache and military obligation, Amara's elder brother. Major General Westfield was a man who understood strategic patience, wielding authority honed on battlefield and boardroom alike. Yet the call that reached him was neither tactical nor procedural. It was primal, an irresistible summons of kinship that transcended the regimentation of rank. In 60 ticking seconds, the cruel pause between chaos and comprehension, he mobilized resources available only to those versed in the intricacies of power and consequence. Unbeknownst to the officers, still ensnared by their version of reality, they had not merely shot a civilian. They had breached a perimeter of profound connection and hidden depth. Westfield's circles were broad, bridging the strictures of command with insights born from service and sacrifice. He was not one who favored misuse of influence, but he possessed a clear-eyed recognition of when such influence was requisite, necessitated by an injustice intolerable. Thus, the wheels shifted inexorably towards intervention. Orders crackled from communication arrays, tempered by strategic iron yet softened by personal hurt. Set against the vibrant, vociferous chorus echoing from streets where strangers gathered in solidarity, Westfield's resolve took form. His actions spelled out immediate implications for the local precinct that had spawned the fateful shot. He dispatched a task force, their assignment clear and forceful: transparency, accountability, and immediate answers to burn into the public record what had occurred. This was not merely a declaration of familial intent. It was a symbol etched deeply by a man who believed in service to country and family alike. His message, delivered swiftly and unmistakably, echoed into the very heart of a precinct not accustomed to scrutiny from such dire heights. It bore the weight of expectation, a lightning strike against which the brittle facade of complacency must crack. In the parking lot, the voices of the officers, now sharply contrasted by those of newly arrived agents of justice, wove a chorus of confusion that sang to crowds hushed and expectant. Amidst the chaos, a shared realization dawned that it wasn't just about Amara anymore. It became a moment of confrontation with a broader reckoning, born from years of neglect and incremental change, now turned tidal in its might. While Amara remained on the pavement, her silent testimony greater in death than those who prescribed its violence, the chessboard of justice reorganized. The stakes elevated far beyond a single confrontation, demanded examination by those unwilling to remain bystanders in society's careless script. Her sacrifice was a line drawn, not in the sand but in indelible ink across hearts now wholly awakened. The The scene was unavoidable, live from a parking lot transformed into a battleground where the ghosts of old injustices and the warriors of new demands met in breathtaking collision. As officers turned towards the newly arrived emissaries of scrutiny, a shift in narrative began, marked by a quiet determination that this tragic series of events would not be allowed to fade into the murkiness of statistical anonymity. Amara's story, fringed with anguish, was poised to unfurl into something larger, engendering not only a quest for personal justice, but systemic overhaul. It demanded of everyone who could see, confronting them with their own complicity or courage. Now, more than ever, with military precision and familial fervor, it was time for the world to watch, learn, and act. The bustling, grim outskirts of the precinct were suddenly permeated by an air of tense anticipation. Agents clad in sober, unmarked uniforms moved with a deliberate urgency befitting the gravitas of their task. They were a specific directive from the Pentagon, embodying the unlikely confluence of legal rigor and military resolve, now focusing on a tragic incident still echoing with fresh heartbreak. A hearing was quickly slated, an attempt as much for control as for justice. Set within austere chambers where the walls themselves seemed steeped in unspoken histories of past deliberations, the room was prepared for a narrative collision. Here, legal proceedings would unravel in tandem with revelations, set to pierce the heart of systemic oversight and expose the veins of prejudice too long ignored. Into this fraught arena stepped Major General Quinn Westfield, his mere presence a manifestation of quiet but uncompromising authority. His gaze was methodical, assessing every angle, every potential threat to the message of accountability he was determined to deliver. He was a man carrying more than just the power of his position. He bore the unsung weight of sibling love forged through shared histories and familiar bond stories that curved a way through laughter and arguments, through echoes and promise, long before adversity reared its insidious head. Across the room the officers sat, clad in the cold official garb of their calling. Their faces, once defiant and unrelenting, now seemed caught in some internal wrestling match with conscience or consequence. On either side of the hearing space stood advocates and adversaries, penned in by a public yearning to see justice not merely served but rightly and courageously enacted. While lawyers articulated stipulations, their phrases cutting through conversation like sharpened steel, Major General Westfield remained resolute. His motivations were not just tactical but deeply personal, and he listened, keenly aware of every nuance in tone and inflection, weighing each word as though it carried the balance of his sister's breath. Respectfully, this isn't just about policy, he interjected at a strategic moment, making his voice a clarion call cutting across muted conversations. His gaze, unwavering, locked on the presiding officials, encapsulating the collective rage and hope beyond these walls. This is about people, her right to be here now, her right to not be counted among the silenced. The words were simple, but carried weight, embedding themselves in the ambient chords of impatience, resounding through public consciousness. Few were prepared for such pointed, honest yet dramatic unveiling of the raw emotional core encapsulating the incident at hand. It was a declaration set not just to highlight the tragic fallout of one particular moment, but to indict a flawed system that perpetuated countless others like it. Onlookers were entranced, their attention centered upon the dramatic juxtaposition that Major General Westfield represented, a powerful alignment of military discipline and individual testimony. This was a moment that transcended the confines of ordinary protocol, acknowledging the undeniable mix of struggles entwined in the fall of one woman and the awakening of many more. As evidence was presented, screens flickered with the tragic footage of Amara's final moments, an unrelenting cascade of visceral reality portrayed in stark, undeniable detail. Faces across the room displayed a spectrum of responses: shock, anger, remorse, and steely determination, all translated through tears long held in check and righteous fury that simmered beneath polished civility. With every unfolding minute, the story of Amara Westfield resounded more forceful unfolding, as both an intimate tragedy and a sharp commentary rippling through systemic negligence. It pushed against the edges of silence where too many similar narratives languished, demanding sympathies be transformed into first apologies and then into action, irrevocable and transformative. Section by section, the hearing laid bare truths that were painful yet powerful, cold yet compelling. revealing a sequence of events sharpened by the stark realities of race and uniformity against the backdrop of justice. A moment aimed at probing accountability now threatened to ignite far broader repercussions, the outcomes of which started shifting an already fraught social tie. By the session's conclusion, a different presence lingered in the air, a potent mix of honor and solemnity, underscoring everyone's commitment to see this through not just as an isolated case, but as a turning point. Westfield's presence amidst the legal, the historic, and the deeply personal was a clarion for an approach that insisted on fundamental change, a testimony echoing far beyond those present that initiated a cry for sweeping systemic overhaul. And as attendees left, the resonance of the hearing traveled alongside them, embedding into conversations and communities. It set the stage for a unified demand, forging resilience strengthened by accountability, calling for collective remembrance and palpable change not long resisted, but long overdue. Everyone who bore witness understood that the legacy of Amara Westfield had now evolved into an anthem of justice, holding within its melody the promise of healing, renewal, and transition. Outside the austere chambers where the hearing had convened, the city throbbed with an undercurrent of palpable energy. The proceedings had concluded, but their reverberations continued to echo far beyond the confines of the courtroom. The public, galvanized by the fresh awareness of systemic injustice, gathered on the streets, their collective voices unfurling like banners across the urban landscape. Major General Quinn Westfield, having witnessed the procedures in their solemn entirety, emerged into this new environment of unified resolve. His presence had become a catalyst, his unwavering demand for justice fusing with the people's newfound determination. The broad avenue was transformed into a vibrant tapestry of humanity, woven with faces chiseled by grief, anger, and a burgeoning sense of empowerment. Across the throng, protesters held signs aloft, symbols of solidarity that proclaimed justice for Amara and end systemic racism, their words cutting sharply through the air. This was more than mere demonstration. It was a movement, a gathering storm of voices refusing to be silenced or disregarded. Here, in this lived testament to Amara's impact, was the true heart of change, the relentless, undeniable current of people power. Amidst the chants and cries for reform, a slender young woman with a megaphone commanded attention, her voice rising above the chorus. She was known as Maya, an activist who had tirelessly campaigned for social justice even before Amara's story emerged. Her stature was small, but her presence immense, radiating conviction through every word. Today we stand not just for Amara, but for every story untold, every injustice suffered in silence, she declared, her voice cutting through the chill of the early evening air with precision. This does not end in a courtroom, it continues in our streets, our homes, our hearts. We demand not only justice, but radical transformation. The crowd responded with thunderous approval, the sound swelling to fill the urban canyons, ricocheting off glass and steel, amplifying the call for immediate, irrevocable change. Among them, Westfield experienced a moment of profound connection, a meeting point of shared purpose and shared pain. Alongside him stood Amara's closest friends and family, their faces etched with sorrow, yet uplifted by the resilience that comes with mutual support. They were the living legacy of Amara's life, testaments to her determination, now magnified by the collective demands of the masses. It was painful yet empowering, a juxtaposition of intimate loss and communal resolve. As night draped the city in its shadowy cloak, candles began to light up in a beautiful, solemn vigil, illuminating the faces of those gathered, creating islands of hope amidst the vast sea of humanity. Each flickering flame represented a commitment, a tribute to those like Amara who had unjustly perished, igniting a dedication to ensuring their stories catalyzed enduring societal introspection and reform. Suddenly, a poignant silence fell over the assembly, more earthen and consuming than any chant could conjure. From this quiet, an unexpected harmony arose. It began softly, but grew with unwavering certainty, a song, familiar and healing. The notes wove through the air, binding together weary souls in collective remembrance and rejuvenation. It was an anthem of fortitude and mourning that lifted spirits, fueling the relentless pursuit of justice with the tender breath of hope. Major General Westfield, surrounded by the soft glow of candles and the resonant strength of the crowd, felt a surging pride alongside his grief. Here, at this crossroads of action and emotion, he realized that Amara's influence extended far beyond the confines of family or duty. Her memory was etched into the fabric of a movement destined for stronger, broader, and bolder impact than anyone could have foreseen. It was a testament to her life and the lives of many others, turning tragedy into transformation. As the song wound down, a new wave of determination took hold of the crowd, crystallized in their shared understanding that, while justice in a courtroom was crucial, it was imperative to push beyond those walls. The journey to eliminate the deeply ingrained biases that had claimed Amara's life demanded persistence and passion. Long after the candles had snuffed out and the headlines faded, Westfield, glancing around at the impassioned assembly, etched this powerful moment into his memory. Here was the realized potential of collective action, and a reminder of the personal duty coursing through his veins would give voice to change, assert its necessity, and fortify its foundations. As the last candle flickered out, Major General Westfield walked into the night buoyed by an eternal resolve, his path illuminated not just by Amara's spirit, but by the fire of a community no longer willing to accept silence in lieu of justice. Here stood a unified front, unwilling to let complacency reign, prepared to inscribe lasting change across the societal slate, ensuring that Amara's story would shape the future in ways that generational suffering never could. The gathered crowd, now dispersed, carried the energy of the evening into their own lives, each determined to foster the legacy of Amara Westfield in every whispered conversation and deliberate action. Booming back from the echoes were the sacred promises forged in a day cloaked in sorrow, made all the more vibrant by the dawn of change certain to follow. Inside the Pentagon, an air of solemn urgency pulsated through the concrete arteries of power. The response to Amara Westfield's tragic incident had triggered a confluence of bureaucracy and moral reckoning, two forces not often aligned. Within its walls, set apart from the frenetic activity outside, a convergence of military and civilian oversight began, rooted in a profound commitment to initiate systemic change. In a room furnished pragmatically yet weighted with history, Major General Quinn Westfield stood at the helm of a specially convened task force. Around him sat high-ranking officials and key military legal advisors, each bearing a responsibility that extended beyond their official remit, reaching into the raw heart of injustice that had catalyzed their sudden assembly. The briefing was to chart the course for accountability and integration of a new framework of oversight tone that promised to resonate across communities nationwide. The discussions teetered between strategic, legal intricacies and emotional authenticity, mirroring the delicate balance of addressing procedural failings while acknowledging the profoundly human tragedy from which their inspiration was drawn. On a large screen in front of them, the image of Amara appeared as a powerful reminder of their purpose. Her face, serene even in its digital representation, was a catalyst for innovation in policy and empathy in governance. "We're here because the status quo cannot stand." Westfield's voice resonated, assured, yet imbued with an undeniable undercurrent of personal significance. "Our response must be more than reactive. We need a proactive strategy that embeds transparency and accountability into the very core of our systems." As he spoke, an aide distributed a series of freshly minted documents, comprehensive legislative proposals that underscored the Pentagon's readiness to spearhead integrative reform. The documents detailed a multifaceted approach involving revised protocols for the use of force, enhanced cooperation with civilian oversight committees, and an overhaul of training curricula to prioritize de-escalation and bias awareness. Eyes around the room scanned the proposals, appraising their scope and potential to effect genuine change, a change long courted but seldom realized, often whispered within closed circles but rarely advancing to action. The moment was steeped in significance, charged with the combined weight of historical momentum and forward-facing resolve. Here lay the bedrock upon which future interactions between law enforcement and the communities they served would be recalibrated, steering toward harmony rather than discord. "Our accountability doesn't end here," continued Westfield, infusing his tone with a compelling urgency. "We owe it to Amara and all those like her to ingrain these changes in every crevice of our operations, to ensure no family must endure such grief without the arm of justice fully extended in their favor." The task force members nodded, some with grim determination, others with a renewed sense of purpose that dared to cross the previously inviolable barriers of institutional inertia. The intersection of military prowess and civilian needs highlighted the vast potential for positive transformation, with each participant ready to contribute towards realizing this shared vision. Across the city, observers within civilian watchdog groups and agencies beyond the Pentagon's immediate influence kept a vigilant eye, their opinions poised for recalibration based on the emergence of tangible results. Their involvement lent credibility and depth to the ongoing efforts, illustrating the power of solidarity over division and alliance born from shared urgency. Back in the room, a fresh determination kindled hope against the backdrop of bureaucratic rigor. The tactical deployment of legal, educational, and operational resources was shaped with an eye towards enduring outcomes, with each participant acutely aware that the steps taken today would echo within their ranks and beyond. "The real test starts now," Westfield concluded, his eyes sweeping the room, holding the gaze of new allies. "It's time to turn our intentions into impactful realities, as immutable as they are essential." With that charge, the task force adjourned, members inspired to propagate the strategic blueprints into the wider world. Their endeavor was far from over. Rather, it was just beginning, bolstered by conviction and an impetus born of necessity and rightful anger at the tragic loss that propelled their actions. Outside, the world continued to resonate with the clarion call of those unified by Amara Westfield's legacy. The drive toward justice was fueled by myriad voices, promising not only to echo through legislative halls, but permeate the very culture of law enforcement across the nation. On this stunning cusp of change, under watchful eyes and just aspirations, lay the first building blocks of a foundation striving to reflect fairness, equality, and hope, a radical reimagining of community safety, where the human spirit was championed above all else, where people of every creed and color might finally live free of fear and filled with possibility. The story of Amara Westfield began to take shape beyond the immediate fury of local media, transcending the bounds of one-off tragic reportage to become a monumental narrative chronicled by a nation's consciousness. In living rooms, town halls, and coffee shops, the incident became a touchstone for dialogues that cascaded through the collective psyche, threading its tragic resonance through diverse communities. Televisions flickered with images of Amara's last moments, voices dipped in solemnity, narrating the story with an understanding of its wider implications for the country and for their viewers. Major networks devoted primetime segments to dissecting not just the incident, but the broader discourse it had ignited. Panels of experts analyzed systemic inequities with laser focus, diving into the historical complexities and prejudices entangled within law enforcement's fabric. Anchors, dressed in sober hues that reflected the gravity of their message, wove Amara's story into a narrative tapestry that demanded unwavering public engagement and systemic reevaluation. In the sprawling offices of Color of Change, an organization renowned for its relentless pursuit of social justice, the usual hum of activity had crystallized into a frenetic focus. Campaign managers clustered around conference tables, laptops aglow with real-time data, each display a portal into public sentiment across states, cities, and neighborhoods. Amara's story was now their rallying cry, energizing their mission with renewed urgency. Ruth Hartman, a senior strategist whose incisive mind was matched only by her passion for advocacy, coordinated efforts with a determination that was electric. Her voice, steady and assertive, directed teams with marching orders that turned outrage into organized action. "We have the momentum. Now is the time to keep the pressure constant," she asserted, gesturing to charts reflecting the spike in engagement and protest support. Wherever people gathered, from bustling urban centers to quiet rural corners, stories and names were shared, painting a portrait of shared indignation and hope. Amara's story, driven by its intrinsic tragedy and the broader, painful reflection it demanded from society, became a catalyst that shifted conversations from acceptance to action, providing a stage for voices amplified by shared resolve. Across screens, one broadcast in particular captured the nation's attention: an exclusive interview with Major General Quinn Westfield. Seated against a somber backdrop of warm tones, his voice carried the weight of personal grief, but also the resolve forged in military resolve. His appearance was a beacon of the Pentagon's unprecedented engagement in the Yeshua gesture towards the urgency with which systemic reform must be pursued. "This is a pivotal moment," Westfield declared, every word laden with a gravity that permitted no disagreement. "We are not merely addressing an incident, but confronting centuries, old paradigms. Change starts here and now, with all of us." His words, methodically chosen and resonant in their simplicity, ricocheted through airwaves, igniting discussions from kitchen tables to college campuses. As he peeled back the layers of governmental commitment to institutional reform, it was clear that the oft-perceived invulnerability of power structures was now permeable to the cries for justice, echoing back from every street. In the world outside, young activists like Maya, who had galvanized public sentiment on the ground, found fresh wind in their sails. The broadcast and its ripple effects served to bolster their efforts, reframing the protest narrative from disjointed outcry to tightly orchestrated demands. "Do you see it?" Maya enthused to a packed room of fellow activists the day after Westfield's interview, her voice tinged with excitement, her eyes wide, reflecting embers of change around her. "We can rewrite our future. Change isn't a mirage. It's not some distant promise. It's now." With this blend of ground activity and media maneuvering, Amara's narrative matured from a tragic occurrence into a fulcrum of societal pivot, a vital element of truth entwined with reform. It became evident that this moment would not fade into obscurity, as so many had in the past. The amplification through media channels ensured Amara's legacy blazed a persistent trail, lighting the path for enduring and essential transformation. The news cycle, once a rapid churn of transient stories, now embraced a rhythm more reflective, more persistent, and more willing to invest in the depth of narrative rather than skimming the surface of sensationalism. The country found itself at a juncture where it was compelled to examine its soul, under scrutiny from a world watching, questioning, and demanding accountability. In this crucible of reform and reporting, the enduring power of Amara's story resonated most clearly. Voices, long unheeded, found amplification and harmony through shared purpose, creating a national symphony of change wherein each note, each retold story of lost potential and reclaimed hope, contributed to a growing anthem of resilience and renewal. It was a testament born from sorrow, yet pregnant with the promise of a future where justice no longer discerned color, only truth. In the heart of a city newly awakened, the newsroom buzzed with the frenetic energy of a media landscape that had shifted its axis. Reporters and editors moved with uncharacteristic urgency, driven by the pivotal nature of their task, to untangle the complexities of the incident that had captured national attention and relay its nuances to a populace clamoring for clarity. Cara Delgado, a seasoned investigative journalist known for her incisive narratives, sat at her cluttered desk, surrounded by stacks of reports and a map dotted with pushpins tracing systemic injustices across the nation. Her laptop screen flickered with details of the ongoing investigation into the incident, task she approached with the relentless precision of someone who had dedicated her life to bringing truth to light. Her phone buzzed incessantly with tips and updates, each message a potential key to unlocking further revelations. The room echoed with the tapping of keyboards, interlaced with the debates of journalists, questioning the layers of bias and brutality laid bare by Amara's tragic story. It was a modern war room, with media, as the weapon and truth as the objective. Kara pored over police records and eyewitness statements, her brow furrowed in concentration. The evidence laid before her told a grim story, one of preconceived notions enhanced through the lens of systemic failings. Her instincts as a journalist, attuned to reading between the lines, sensed that the firing of the shot wasn't an isolated act, but rather the culmination of unsavory patterns entrenched in practice yet invisible to the undiscerning eye. In another room, teams dissected public sentiment, gauging the shift in national dialogue from uncertainty to a rare, unified indignation. Newsrooms, usually caught in the churn of quick outputs, now shared a singular focus on sustaining the momentum for accountability, ensuring that the voices echoing in protest were paired with stories that unearthed the truth, unfiltered and raw. Kara, rising from her seat, made her way to the central hub of activity, a sprawling expanse dominated by screens displaying news feeds and social media reactions. Her editor, Jeff Boston, greeted her with a nod, signaling an intense strategy session commencing amidst the cacophony of the newsroom. "We need to focus on what lies beneath," Jeff urged, his voice cutting through the ambient buzz. "The systemic roots. Our viewers need more than tragedy. They need comprehension. They need to see the bigger picture." Kara nodded in agreement, understanding that the power of storytelling lay not only in recounting events but in contextualizing them, illuminating pathways to solutions. She understood the delicate balance between compassion and exposition, revealing without exploiting the inherent pain of the narrative. Working with the editorial team, she began piecing together a multi-segment exposé aimed at threading Amara's story into the fabric of national consciousness. It involved chronicling the history of racial bias in law enforcement, while also weaving in personal accounts that humanized the impact of each statistic. Interviews with experts in sociology, law, and community leaders were lined up, each perspective adding to the complex mosaic they were constructing. Amongst the flurry of activities, a pivotal moment materialized when an unexpected ally stepped forward. Officer Darrell Hughes, a fellow officer who had vocally disagreed with his colleague's actions in the Westfield case. His willingness to speak out promised an explosive addition to Kara's investigative series, offering an insider perspective that could challenge entrenched narratives within the policing community. Kara, who had interviewed countless sources in her career, felt the significance of Officer Hughes' testimony. This wasn't just another interview, it was the kind of groundbreaking confession that could penetrate institutional walls, unraveling complicity and secrecy. It was a step towards reconciliation and reform that transcended mere acknowledgments, forming a bridge of understanding between communities often at odds. Working past midnight in the dim glow of her office, Kara compiled narratives into a compelling story that extended beyond mere media coverage to become part of a larger movement toward sustainable change. Her words, crafted with precision and empathy, sparked conversations across dinner tables and digital realms alike, driving forward the demand for truth and reconciliation. As her report went live, the impact was immediate and profound, echoing far beyond the confines of typical viewership charts. It resonated deeply, inciting introspection among audiences about their roles in perpetuating or dismantling systemic inequities. The newsroom basked in a rare moment of triumphant testament not only to informed reporting but to the power of storytelling in nurturing social change. Amara Westfield's narrative, no longer confined to a tragic ending, evolved into a pivot for collective action and understanding, inspiring a renewed commitment to examining truths long hidden. The newsroom, once a conveyor of news, now stood as a harbinger of hope, pen poised to chronicle the next chapters of transformation unfolding across a nation compelled to reckon with its conscience. As dawn broke, casting a serene light over the city still echoing with the fervor of the night before, Amara's neighborhood slowly stirred into life. Yet for those who had gathered in her community, the new day ushered in more than mere routine. It birthed a deeper resolve to channel sorrow into strength, despair into decisive action. The community center, often a hub of local activity and familial gatherings, was transformed into a command center for activism. Banners bearing Amara's likeness adorned the walls, each one framed by messages of solidarity and resolve. Justice for Amara and change is now were emblazoned across the hearts of those who entered. Inside, a gathering of local residents seeped into every corner. They were a mosaic of backgrounds young and old, students, parents, and local leaders united by the tragedy that had shocked them into motion. They represented a microcosm of a nation grappling with the weight of institutional inequity, ready to harness the narratives of the fallen for a powerful rebirth. Maya, now an indomitable spirit infused with the strength of newfound allies, stood at the room's center, her presence commanding yet deeply connected to those she addressed. Her eyes roamed over the faces that mirrored the same determination she felt pulsing through her veins. "Today isn't just about gathering," she began, her voice resonant with the pulse of collective urgency. "It's about organizing, mobilizing, turning our grief into power so potent that it cannot be ignored." A ripple of assent flowed through the room, a wordless acknowledgement of the truth Maya had voiced. They never imagined their daily lives intersecting so dramatically with national events. Yet here they were, standing on the precipice of unprecedented change, ready to bridge their individual stories with a broader narrative demanding justice. Plans unfurled like well-tended maps charting pathways of activism. Initiatives for peaceful protests interwove with agendas to meet with local officials, pushing for legislative change at the municipal level. Workshops were schemed, crowdfunding campaigns launched, and petitions drafted, each one an embodiment of resistance molded into practical action. Among the volunteers was an elderly man, Mr. Thompson, whose quiet demeanor belied his storied past as an early civil rights advocate. He had witnessed the rise and fall of movements, seen injustices evolve rather than resolve, and now watched with hopeful, proud eyes as a new generation took up the mantle. "Change," he said gently, when Maya approached him, "is a long, winding road, and your spirit lights that path." Maya nodded, galvanized by the sincerity and wisdom in his gaze. "We're ready to walk it," she replied, her own determination mirrored in the younger assemblage around them. Aided by social media's expansive reach, the plans crystallized into a cohesive strategy that transcended localized efforts, bridging geographical divides to inspire solidarity across states and borders. Every tweet, post, and shared message became a brick laid in the foundation of this burgeoning movement for reform. The momentum, once fledgling, now surged with unstoppable force. The rallying cries swelled beyond physical venues, finding echoes in the hearts of thousands of sympathizers who, even miles away, felt tethered by shared conviction. They became a chorus demanding justice, not just in policy but in practice, determined to invigorate the disheartened, challenge the complacent, and awaken the unaware. As another meeting concluded and the participants dispersed into the early afternoon sun, there was an undeniable feeling of transition, a recognition that Amara's story had sparked something enduring. Her narrative had woven a common thread that tied individuals into communities, communities into a movement that carried within it the potential to reshape the landscape of justice. The neighborhood, previously a quiet enclave on the city's periphery, now pulsed as a focal point of transformative hope. It had become a nexus for ideas, a sanctuary for the disillusioned, and a hall of remembrance where Amara's dreams continued to bloom within every seemingly inconsequential act that collectively captured national attention. Through open windows and cracked doors, the sound of resolved debate and impassioned promises rolled into the twilight, igniting evening skies with the burning truth that change was not only essential, but imminent. And as the stars unfolded their glow over the city, the neighborhood stood united, a vibrant beacon that proclaimed a future shaped by voices unified in mourning and in courage. For Amara's spirit, forever etched in their cause, now served as a compass guiding them towards the justice that had long eluded so many before. A justice rooted not only in the courts, but in the consciousness of a community, awakened and determined, ready to trail a blaze of hope through darkness and despair, inscribing a new chapter resiliently cut into the annals of time. Within the secluded corridors of the police department, a different kind of tension simmered. Here, behind the facade of orderliness, the initial ripples of panic from the aftermath of the shooting had escalated into full-blown waves of introspection and unyielding scrutiny. The department, cast into the fiery spotlight of public ire and expectation, found itself the unlikely epicenter of a reckoning it could no longer sidestep. Investigation by Internal Affairs had intensified following the shooting, evolving from routine inquiries into a surgical dissection of practices long overdue for such scrutiny. Interviews, document reviews, and audit trails became the tools of transparency, wielded with determination by investigators no longer swayed by camaraderie nor constrained by inertia. These were individuals galvanized either by personal conviction or palpable fear of scrutiny from higher echelons of power. Between the clattering keyboards and sterile conference rooms hung an air thick with apprehension. Officers, once accustomed to a culture of unspoken immunities, now faced a palpable shift in climate that transformed even routine operations into exhaustive exercises of accountability. Conversations, heavy with the weight of potential revelations, cloaked themselves in whispers and downcast glances shared in hurried exchanges. Officer Donnelly and Officer Rourke, the key figures in the catalytic incident, found themselves isolated within this unfolding drama, their positions precarious amid the sweeping changes that threatened the precinct's status quo. The pair, previously stalwart in their defense, began feeling the tide turn against them as confidential testimonies from their colleagues pointed to systemic failings as blatant as they were deep-rooted. In a nondescript office transformed into the epicenter of investigation, the sound of extracted truths reverberated off the walls. Senior investigator Linda Travers, a woman known for her keen instincts and uncompromising pursuit of justice, navigated through mounting evidence with steely resolve. Her reputation for integrity and fairness preceded her, lending gravitas to her presence, a marker that signaled the gravity of their probe. Travers regarded a report, her eyes narrowing at the familiar pattern of incidents nestled within its pages, patterns indicative of an endemic bias underlying departmental operations. The numbers, stark and accusatory, painted a narrative corroborated by whispered truths from officers and countless civilian interactions gone awry. "What we have here is more than an isolated incident," she declared in a meeting with key investigative personnel, her voice authoritative yet measured. "We're unraveling a systemic issue that cannot continue unchecked. The integrity of law enforcement depends on our willingness to confront these faults and correct them." The decision fostered a ripple of assent among her team, underscoring their shared commitment to justice over aversion to change. Among them sat David Greer, a newcomer to the department with a passion for reform. His youthful energy and fresh perspective brought vitality to their efforts, bridging gaps between entrenched officers and a public that had grown disillusioned by repeated narratives of abuse and neglect. "We've got to get this right," Grier added, a note of urgency coloring his voice. "People are watching us. They're holding us to an unprecedented standard." Investigator Travers nodded, well aware of the public's intensified gaze. "We're not just reshaping policies, we're reshaping trust. It's a fragile thing, hard to build, easy to break." Under this directive, change began to materialize, spurred not only by the internal pressure for reform, but by the inexhaustible demand from a watching world. Community outreach expanded beyond lip service engagements, cultivated into inclusive dialogues fueled by empathy and respect. Mentorship programs and bias training burgeoned with fervor, pairing law enforcement with civilians in a bid to reshape mutual perceptions through shared experiences. Back at the department, officers were pulled into mandatory debriefs and workshops, some embracing the shift towards transparency, others resentful, burdened by the weight of long-standing traditions under threat. Change, much like justice, was a jagged pill swallowed with difficulty, but one they were increasingly compelled to digest. Officer Donnelly, the gravity of the situation settling heavily on him, sat alone in the precinct's break room, his heart tossing violently between defiance and introspection. A television overhead broadcast a live panel dissecting the very precinct he served, with terms like systemic racism and urgent reform emblazoned across the ticker tape. The narrative had grown beyond even him, an engulfing tidal wave of change neither he nor his partner had anticipated. Here, in the tangled web of internal affairs, lay the stirrings of an overhaul poised on the precipice of realization. The precinct had been thrust into an uncompromising transformation, a rebirth scrutinized not only by those within its walls but by a society thirsty for accountability, for justice, for a reinvigorated future no longer ensnared by the failings of its past. As the precinct navigated these uncharted waters, steered by the unyielding demands of truth and transformation, it became abundantly clear. The legacy of Amara Westfield, etched in pain but yearning for reconciliation, would become the crucible by which progress was measured, and the foundation upon which trust might finally be rebuilt. Within the walls of the police precinct, the pressure of public accountability stretched tensions among officers as tightly as the overstrained infrastructure they inhabited. Uncertainty snaked through their ranks, a silent specter reminding each officer that the eyes of the nation had settled squarely upon them, and change, in all its relentless integrity, was demanding action. For Officer Donnelly and Officer Rourke, the gravity of their situation deepened with each passing day. No longer merely operating under the radar of administrative inquiry, they were now subjects on the precipice of career-defining, potentially life-altering judgments. With every whispered conversation and sidelong glance, reality quelled their initial posture of defiant innocence, replacing it with introspection steeped in dread and possibility. The whispers echoed in hallways and locker rooms, rooms heavy with undercurrents of apprehension and quiet resentment. It was evident that the department was grappling with an identity crisis. It could no longer ignore a fiery reckoning long in the making, now stoked by Amara Westfield's story that refused to quell to background noise. In an unassuming boardroom, heavily burdened with the weight of decisions yet to come, Police Chief Margaret Lang stood at the front, her stature projecting an authority hard-earned through years at the helm. Her leadership was being tested in ways that both challenged and defined her, and she was acutely aware that the department's credibility, as well as her own, was on trial in equal measure. Gathered before her was a motley assembly of officers, brass and blue alike, their faces reflective of the dichotomy that had infiltrated their ranks. Chief Lang scanned them with a discerning gaze, lest her words drift into the rhetoric of mere repetition. "We're at a crossroads," Chief Lang began, her voice carrying an unyielding clarity. "The actions from now on will answer to more than just departmental policies. They'll answer to the very communities who depend on us to protect and serve with integrity." Her declaration infused the room with a palpable tension that no one dared dispel. Officers shifted in their seats, the normally reassuring weight of their badges now feeling like an accusatory emblem. "We must not simply conform to change, we should embody it," Chief Lang continued, highlighting the urgency with an authority that brooked no dissent. "Our commitment to transparency and reform must be unwavering. No more hiding behind procedure, no more silent complicity." Officer Hughes, the officer who had previously broken the blue silence to support the pursuit of accountability, felt a tightening in his chest. His was a risk that reapportioned the hierarchy, banking on truth and accountability for redemption instead of preservation. "Chief," he interjected, his words imbued with a raw honesty born from his introspective challenges over recent weeks. "There are many good men and women here, officers who want to do right by the departments and our citizens. But we need leadership that supports us in transforming aspiration into action." His comment, unexpected and sincere, resonated across the gathering like a bell toll. Chief Lang nodded, acknowledging the truth seated in his foreseeing a truth that demanded nurturing, not obstruction. Elsewhere, in offices monitoring the evolution, public officials and civilian oversight committees observed the goings-on with bated breath, hearing the echoes of Hughes' call for unity with communities humming at larger frequencies. Agreement and strategy emerged hand in hand, driving mandates both externally championed and internally realized. To this end, practical measures gained momentum. Some involved the diversification of recruitment sectors, targeting ethics training with greater focus and veracity. Outreach programs were redefined, fostering meaningful relationships with community leaders, enhancing their authenticity beyond perfunctory obligations. Departments were urged to release public transparency reports, regular disclosures anticipated to gradually restore trust. In houses speckled across neighborhoods, families tuned into live broadcasts from the precinct, witnessing the semblance of reform sprouting from within. Communities had gathered, ready to support genuine repair, though keenly watching to identify any perfunctory acts masquerading as meaningful change. For the officers, each day brought newer challenges, as well as opportunities for recovery, accountability, and clear-eyed reconciliation. Eschewing historic norms of silence, dialogues previously shrouded moved into the public forum, quelling the rumble of backlash with an openness of resolve. Officers were reminded that their charge wasn't merely to police, but to nurture and repair bonds lost to time's fractured past. Chief Lang dismissed the meeting with a heightened awareness that Amara Westfield's legacy, one rippling through these transformative currents, was steering them towards a more equitable future, no longer colored by complicity, but rather by moral courage. Only time would reveal if these sweeping changes would solidify into the bedrock of truth and justice, upon which the fractured public trust could be rebuilt. And as the officers dispersed, casting contemplative glances at one another, marked by differing optimism and trepidations, the precinct became a more complex vessel a custodian of metamorphic reform drifting across seasons of constriction toward seasons of deliverance, guided by the burgeoning flame of possibility Amara's story had ignited. The shifting dynamics within the precinct were not merely internal, they resonated up the chain, reaching the upper echelons of power and influence. At the Pentagon, where the air was often filled with the pragmatic discussions of defense strategy and national security, the reaction to Amara's tragedy had fused disparate elements into a powerful coalition with a singular focus: accountability and reform. Within those hallowed halls, Major General Quinn Westfield carried the weight of a dual responsibility, not just as a military leader tasked with maintaining the nation's security, but as a brother propelled by personal grief to ensure that justice for Amara was neither compromised nor postponed. His steadfast resolve had transformed what might have been an isolated tragedy into a pivotal moment for systemic change. In a room commanded by strategic oversight and bristling with technology, Westfield joined a special committee convened to tackle the civilian-military relations emphasized by this case. Alongside him sat other military officials, leaders from the Department of Justice, and representatives from civil rights organizations. The composition of this committee underscored its commitment to bridging worlds often viewed as separate, those of national defense and local accountability. As the meeting convened, the atmosphere was charged with the recognition of this unique intersection of responsibility and influence. Westfield's personal connection to the case lent gravity to the discourse, reminding all present that at the heart of policy and reform lay individual lives and stories each as impactful as Amara's. "We're faced with an unprecedented opportunity," Westfield began, his voice steady but laden with the gravity of the cause. "We have the momentum, the resources, and most crucially, the national support to effect true change. Let's ensure this incident acts as a catalyst for lasting societal reform." Around the table, nods of assent met his words. The group understood that this was a moment to transcend decorum and delve deeply into the interplay of power structures and civilian realities. The aim was to develop strategies that could be adopted nationwide, creating a seamless interface between communities and law enforcement, reducing the gaps that had widened through systemic neglect and disconnection. Discussions ranged from overhauling the training regimens for law enforcement, integrating empathy and bias mitigation strategies drawn from military experience in diverse environments, to establishing consistent review processes that would enable transparent and rigorous scrutiny of officers' actions. Suggestions included implementing body cameras with oversight capabilities managed by third-party civilian boards, ensuring that accountability was embedded in every operation, every decision. "The key is sustained commitment," voiced a DOJ representative, his tone authoritative, yet hopeful. "We need to document these practices and hold each division accountable through continual evaluation, measuring success not just by decreased incidents, but by increased trust within the communities." As they mapped out these proposals, the abstract lines between military order and civilian freedom began to blur into a cohesive framework, one that recognized the humanity at the core of their mission. The dual mandates of safety and equity guided the drafting of national guidelines poised to redefine standard operating procedures across law enforcement agencies. Westfield took a moment, feeling the pulse of the discussions branch into potent possibilities. Images of Amara, bright and boldly defiant against the injustices she had faced, urged him forward, imbibing his strategy with personal dedication. "We are reshaping the concept of protection," he emphasized, ensuring that every officer understands their role as a partner to the people, an ally rather than an enforcer. That shift is critical for Amara and for countless others. An animated exchange followed, diverse perspectives honing a singular vision, committed to reshaping institutional legacies into conduits of justice. The documentation aligned into concrete proposals aimed at swift implementation. As the group adjourned, there was a shared sense that Amara's legacy was serving as a fulcrum to realign present and future, steering a societal course towards a more just and equitable terrain. Back at the Pentagon, Westfield felt a surge of determination. The corridors of power had echoed his sister's name, and it was up to him to ensure they wouldn't forget. He knew the road would be complex and fraught with challenges, but the strides taken in that room were testament to the power of relentless dedication and undertaking to honor Amara's story by crafting a future safeguarded by transparency, protected by community trust, pivoted on mutual respect. Leaving the meeting, beneath the distant rotors of helicopters and the labyrinthine pathways of governance, echoed the quiet promise of Renovation One that ventured beyond rhetoric into realized action. For within the inherent strength of the military and the unyielding spirit of civil rights movements lay the transformative might of justice, now at the ready to rise and respond, heralding in an era where protection equated partnership, and every life carried the undeniable right to justice, hope, and unyielding dignity. Amara Westfield's vibrant presence lingered in the hearts of those who knew her, casting a comforting shadow over their lives, even as they navigated the freshly carved void her absence had left. Within the confines of her family home, her spirit continued to resonate in the rooms, filled with photographs and mementos, bearing witness to a life lived with purpose and unyielding hope. Her mother, Evelyn Westfield, sat quietly at the kitchen table, enveloped by the soft light filtering through the curtains, its warmth reminiscent of the gentle glow Amara often brought into their lives. Each picture around her whispered their own narratives. Amara's laughter captured mid-motion, her poised stance at various life milestones, the gentle fierceness in her eyes that spoke of unrelenting dreams and heartfelt commitment to justice. Evelyn cradled a mug of tea, her fingers wrapped around its warmth, as she gazed out over the small garden Amara had once labored in with attentive care. Every bloom and branch had been meticulously nurtured by Amara, mirroring the care she invested in those around her, a cultivation of beauty amidst strife. Always hopeful, always resolute. The silence enveloping the space was one Evelyn had grown familiar with, but never accustomed to. It was not the absence of noise, she realized, but the longing for a voice that had been taken too soon, a voice now woven into a narrative transcending the walls of their home, its echoes demanding change from people far beyond their neighborhood. Her solitude was interrupted by the soft rustle of paper as her gaze shifted to a stack of letters and cards that had accumulated over recent days. They were tributes from loved ones, from strangers who'd been touched by Amara's story, each inscribed with words of empathy and commitment to a cause now thrust upon them all. Among them was a letter from Quinn, detailing the outcomes of his meetings, the strides made in Amara's name. His written words carried the determined conviction of a brother who, though immersed in his own grief, remained a linchpin in the fight for justice. Evelyn knew that the nation's new direction, with its pledges for reform, was born from Amara's tragic transformation into a symbol for change. Yet, it was in these quiet moments, surrounded by memories, that Evelyn found solace in leading the family charge to ensure her daughter's legacy blazed beyond its immediate surroundings into perpetual light. The front door creaked open, admitting a gust of invigorating wind as Amara's closest confidant, Thalia, entered with a hesitant smile. In her eyes was a question Evelyn knew well, a silent inquiry for how she was holding up, and importantly, a request for permission to embark on a task they both knew must be completed. "Evelyn," Thalia began, her voice gently cheerful, as if not to break the reverie of remembrance in the room. "I thought we could start planning the next steps for the scholarship fund," she suggested. This, Evelyn knew, was the most telling testament to Amara's enduring hope, a scholarship in her name, crafted to uplift those voices often drowned out, marginalize the very youths Amara had sought to empower, through action, through kindness, through resolve. Standing up, Evelyn moved toward the table where they would collate ideas, memories transforming into tangible resolutions. Together, they began sifting through their collected notes, setting into motion initiatives that would provide educational opportunities in Amara's honor. Each step of the process was imbued with her essence, her insatiable quest for knowledge, her unyielding desire for equality that permeated every conversation she had ever had. Plans melded into a structured framework, soon to coalesce into a foundation that would endow aspiring students with the financial and moral support Amara championed. Evelyn felt a quiet empowerment and a keen awareness that through these endeavors, her daughter's voice would continue to resonate, guiding others toward confronting injustices with boldness and integrity. As the day transitioned into dusk, the room was illuminated with a sense of renewed determination, a tangible force that bridged the gaps of absence with action and legacy. Thalia's presence, warm and unyielding, echoed that of Amara's steadfast allegiance to justice and hope, substantial enough to have grief's encroachment. Amara would be proud, Thalia mused, her lips curving into a bittersweet smile as they surveyed what had been accomplished. Evelyn returned the sentiment with a quiet nod, the palpable proof of Amara's enduring influence shimmering in their midst. In the profound silence that followed, Evelyn and Thalia took a collective breath, knowing that their journey had just begun. It was one steered by purpose, driven by the unspoken promise they had made to ensure Amara's spirit and her aspirations threaded through the generations to carve enduring paths of opportunity. Outside, the garden whispers of Amara's tender care flourished beneath the night sky, a testament to a life that, though abbreviated, was amplifying change, urging the world toward remembrance, action, and a future unveiled from the prismatic final note of injustice and redefined by enduring, collective justice. As the day drifted into evening, casting long shadows over the community Amara had called home, her presence seemed to rise from the very streets. The corners and alleyways resonated with the pulse of her spirit, carried forward by the lives she had touched and the many who now found themselves rallying in her name. In the center of this convergence stood the modest community center. Its unassuming facade belied the monumental impact of its Missiona frontline in the quest for justice and change, inspired by Amara's unwavering dedication to her neighborhood. Inside, the air was thick with anticipation, mingling with the scent of coffee and earnest purpose. At the helm of this gathering was Maya, her sense of urgency and resolve a palpable force as she moved among the tables where groups huddled, deep in focused discussion. She had become an emblem of local activism, her leadership invigorated by Amara's legacy, steering these efforts with passion as unwavering as the one who inspired it. "All right, everyone, let's get started," Maya called, her voice echoing through the small auditorium. Around her, heads lifted, their attention riveted by her energy and the promise of coming change. The crowd was diverse students, professionals, retirees, all united under a banner of possibility, ready to transform moment into movement. Maya gestured towards a large whiteboard filled with notes and schematic outlines, each one a tether to action plans designed to dismantle systemic inequities that had been laid bare by Amara's death. The room was alive with the electric buzz of potential, ideas sparking between participants like quicksilver across circuits. "The scholarship fund is gaining momentum," Maya began, nodding at Evelyn seated near the front, who had become the community's anchor, a symbol of resolute strength. "But there's more we can do to honor Amara's vision, more we need to do." The floor buzzed with affirmations, a collective will poised to turn aspirational visions into concrete actions. Maya continued, outlining initiatives like educational seminars and workshops aimed at empowering youth through practical knowledge and leadership training efforts designed to cultivate a new generation prepared to challenge and redefine the boundaries of justice and equality. As dialogue flowed, the room became a crucible of innovation, each member contributing their experiences and resources to bolster the movement. Volunteers stepped forward to lead initiatives, each testament to a shared dedication undiminished by grief, galvanized instead into purpose by a loss that refused to be diminished. Notably, A young man, Elijah, raised his hand, his expression one of earnest conviction. Amara's work with the after-school programs changed the trajectory of so many lives, including mine. We need to expand that outreach in her honor and for our future. The room's response was immediate and resonant, their claps and murmurs enveloping Elijah's acknowledgement with shared resolve. Initiatives were sketched with rapidity, amending and expanding existing programs that Amara had initiated, aiming for impact that resonated both immediately and iteratively over time. Near the end of the session, as conversations began to wind down to a soft hum, Maya turned to face the group, her gaze sweeping over each individual to capture the shared spirit of commitment. Amara's legacy is about more than remembering, she said, her voice imbued with determination. It's about continuing. It's about doing. Together, we'll forge paths she wanted all of us to walk. The words lingered in the air, settling over their community like an earnest vow of promise enfolded within its own complexity. Yet striving toward simplicity of intent, people began to disperse, buoyed by the tasks ahead, their steps infused with direction and clarity as they moved towards ways they could reach out, build up, and amplify Amara's vision. Outside, the evening air crackled with determination, brushed by whispers of plans unfurling into the night. Streetlights flickered on, casting a gentle luminescence over the scene, as if acknowledging the potent energies consolidated below. Amidst the emerging dusk, the community center stood like a beacon, drawing in those eager to transform grief into galvanizing momentum. Every effort undertaken, every story shared, and every life touched became threads woven together under Amara's legacy binding, reinforcing and illuminating a shared path forward. Beneath a tapestry sky blooming with stars, the community found itself not merely in mourning, but in a profound awakening. It was not a call to arms, but a call to hearts and assembly, urging each person toward justice, equity, and unyielding hope through collective commitment and enduring action. This spirit, ignited by Amara's unwavering light, transformed the ordinary into the extraordinary, the forgotten corners into collective centers of change, advancing the dream she entrusted them all to carry forward, a world remade, one effort at a time, into a realm where every life was cherished, every voice heard, and every possibility harnessed. In the wake of Amara Westfield's untimely death, the ripples of activism she inspired began to form into a resonant tidal wave. Across the country, a network of change emerged, interlacing communities once separated by geography, but now united by purpose and pain. Her name became a symbol around which alliances were built, each vow to uphold justice, strengthened by interpersonal connections, forged in empathy and shared resolve. Digital platforms buzzed with energy as activists, old and new, convened in virtual spaces to strategize and mobilize. Social media, often a proving ground for fleeting trends, became a bastion of sustained dialogue, where hashtags morphed into community hubs, allowing ideas and initiatives to flow across invisible borders, uniting people under Amara's legacy. In these virtual forums, stories of injustice previously relegated to shadows were brought into sharing light, amassing collective voices demanding accountability. Each post, tweet, and share amplified narratives into a chorus that refused to be silenced, guided by a shared understanding that solidarity was their strongest ally. Maya, now an established figure within these ranks, orchestrated these collective efforts with a fervor recognized by all who interacted with her. Her influence spread like the roots of an ancient tree, connecting participants from disparate backgrounds into a cohesive force dedicated to systemic transformation. Utilizing the power of technology, Maya led webinars that convened experts on racial equity, legal reforms, and community activism. These discussions propelled the movement forward, each interaction closing gaps of misunderstanding and fostering a nuanced comprehension of the societal inflections that led to the deep-seated issues they faced. "We're doing more than starting a conversation," Maya stressed during one such session, her passion fueling the dialogue. "We're rewriting it completely, ensuring that every voice that's shouted into the void finds a reverberating echo amid a network committed to change." Her words resonated through monitors and headphones, finding receptive ears among youth advocates, seasoned campaigners, and those newly awakened to the struggle, each person drawn into a commitment to reimagine justice not merely as an aspiration, but as an achievable reality. Meanwhile, in the corridors of power, those in governance noted the swell of civic engagement with a blend of wary skepticism and hopeful consideration. Lawmakers, confronted by this groundswell of public demand, began to consider legislative proposals that had been languishing in committee folders. The movement's momentum compelled them to actualize reforms, inspired by an electorate that now called for their accountability and presence at deliberative tables. At town halls and public hearings, the insistence of informed citizens pressed their representatives to push for policy modifications, with urgency undeterred by traditional political inertia. These gatherings, vibrant and vocal, infused local governance with activism's heartbeat, an insistent drum demanding innovation, sustainability, and transparency. Through the intricate network created in Amara's name, local leaders communicated strategies that had succeeded on smaller scales, merging voices to champion initiatives like increased funding for mental health services, mandatory bias training for law enforcement, and expanded educational opportunities for marginalized communities, each a tangible tribute to Amara's unfulfilled dreams. Evelyn Westfield, feeling her daughter's influence in each conversation and coalition, remained a central figure in these efforts, her presence epitomizing resilience and leadership born from profound loss. Her guidance, imbued with the weight of personal experience, steered initiatives with grace and dignity that inspired those around her to persevere. The community that sprang forth from Amara's light grew into an enduring beacon where individuals moved with intentionality, where change was nurtured through action, and where justice and equality were not hollow words, but calibrated goals pursued with unwavering commitment. As these networks solidified, the interconnected roots created paths for mutual action and consensus, etching a new blueprint for civic engagement across the nation. These citizens, previously scattered and unaware of each other's battles, now stood united as architects of reform, with Amara's memory guiding them like a lodestar visible in the darkest of skies. In the quiet moments, beneath the constellation of community hopes and dreams, lay the realization that their collective strength, their allegiance to change not only honored Amara's life, but also illuminated a path toward the equitable future they relentlessly pursued. Here, within the vast tapestry of emerging alliances, was the evidence of humanity's resilience, harnessed through shared aspirations and a belief staunch and unwavering that they were not merely participants in change, but its fearless emissaries, fired by the light Amara left to guide them through their most challenging and transformative hours. The air was thick with emotion as Evelyn Westfield walked through the halls of Amara's childhood home, each creak in the weathered floorboards echoing memories of a life now painted in absence. Her daughter's vibrant laughter, mapped onto the familiar strewn spaces, lived on in echoes she could almost grasp, reverberating alongside their family history. For Evelyn, the nation's rally in Amara's name offered comfort but also an unending confrontation with raw sadness. Yet, it was within this shared grief that hope surgayed a world learning to view justice not merely as a system, but as a living process, a continuous journey of accountability and healing. In the quiet moments, Evelyn often reflected on the duality of loss and unity. As much as her heart ached for her daughter, it swelled with pride at the community, forged through Amara's sacrifice, raising its voice against the enduring silence of passivity. A community leaning on shared grief, yet standing resolute in collective strength. Each day, Evelyn sifted through messages and letters from strangers, their sincerity offering slivers of solace amid the turmoil. One letter, in particular, stood out, an envelope covered with smudged postmarks and scrawled handwriting from a small town far away. Within was a heartfelt note, simple yet profound. Your daughter has reawakened our hearts and given us the courage to speak up. Thank you for sharing her with the world. These small reminders, filled with shared humanity, connected Evelyn to the lives of countless others whose paths she would likely never cross. In them, she found a wellspring of resilience, a widening perspective that transformed each ache into action, each sorrow into steadfast purpose. Preparing for a monthly vigil in Amara's honor, Evelyn stood before a mirror, her reflection revealing a face lined not just with the passage of time, but with the burden of unyielding hope. She saw the mother Amara loved dearly, a guardian now charged with nurturing a legacy that had outgrown them both. Gathering her thoughts, Evelyn made her way to a local church, where the vigil was to be held, a quiet, sacred space whose pews would soon cradle others, carrying their own burdens of loss and learning. Here, they converged, buoyed by the determination reflective of Amara's transformative justice, echoed into being by efforts of friends, family, and strangers alike. As evening enveloped the church with its gentle shadows, those assembled lit candles, tiny flames reaching upwards, each a luminary of tribute and transcendence. The flicker of lights danced across bowed heads, joining in a silent symphony of remembrance, communing with shared emotional resonance. Evelyn stood among them, a pillar of strength amidst gentle murmurs, her words vested with authority drawn from lived experience, echoing through the rafters with solemn grace. "Amara's light hasn't left us," she began, her voice steady despite the quivering beneath it. "It guides every action, every heartfelt plea for a world knit from equality and compassion." The faces of those before her, a collage representing generations and journeys, nodded along, feeling the hard truths within her words align with their collective commitment. This was a fellowship born of tragedy, bound in a purpose that eclipsed individual stories, revealing a greater narrative etched into the annals of continuous change. Among the assembly was Major General Quinn Westfield, his presence a steadfast reminder of familial dedication intertwined with public duty. He listened to his mother's words, her strength mirroring his own resolve to see Amara's light refracted through policy and practice, each stride forward in homage to her legacy. As Evelyn concluded her address, the gathered voices resonated in an unwavering chant, a mantra weaving grief and perseverance into oaths of solidarity. "We remember, we restore, we rise." The candlelight vigil cast a radiant glow out into the night, each candle a testimony to Amara and others, whose stories etched deeper narratives of justice and redemption across hearts now awakening from their slumber. Backed by the profound shelter of community, Evelyn felt a newfound warmth, a renewal she embraced as both healing and an emblem of forward momentum. She realized that while they grieved together, it was in their reawakening to hope that they truly honored Amara's influence, invoking unity and crafting justice that honored every dream she had dared to dream. As the congregation dispersed into the night, beneath stars reflective of dreams far-reaching and invincible, it was here in this quiet triumph over despair, through the interconnected realms of heart and action, a moment blossomed into a living testament of Amara's enduring presence, uncompromised by silence or pause, held firm by the love that sustained everything they were building together. As the momentum of Amara Westfield's legacy began to crystallize into actionable paths, the fervor of the grassroots movement ignited by her memory forged a foundation for restorative justice to bloom. Across cities and towns, young advocates and seasoned leaders alike converged into newly formed committees, each dedicated to translating indignant cries into structured frameworks for change. Evelyn Westfield, at the heart of this burgeoning movement, became a guiding voice amid these efforts, her role transcending that of a bereaved mother to become an architect of the very reform her daughter had long envisioned. It was a role that bridged the chasms of loss with the oak-hewn resolve required to sustain a journey both arduous and aspirational. In spaces where policy and activism intersected, Evelyn found herself amidst gatherings of alliance building, her presence a testament to the potency of reclaiming agency from tragedy. Convened in city council chambers and community venues, these meetings were marked by a sense of resolve rippling through the air, a solemn understanding that they were bending the arc of history towards a justice no longer deferred. At one such meeting, where the agenda centered around lived experience and tangible reform, Evelyn watched as stakeholders from various sectors presented initiatives poised to reinvent standards of justice nationwide. Representatives from law enforcement stood side by side with civic leaders, educators, and legal experts, their collaborative efforts igniting a beacon of coalitional strength. Maya, ever the spirited advocate, stood before the assembled group, her conviction as radiant as ever. "Restorative justice is more than healing," she asserted, each word a billet of conviction. It's restitution. It's the process of acknowledging harm and crafting pathways for restoration that benefits the entire community. The room, charged with anticipation, came alive with a back-and-forth dialogue, each contribution building upon the other as reciprocal understanding and shared visions of egalitarian justice unfurled across discussions. Stories were shared, both of triumph and failure, voices harmonizing in a symphony of shared purpose. A monumental proposal stood at the center of these dialogues: the establishment of community mediation boards empowered to assess and address minor infringements alongside formal justice systems. These boards, drawing members from diverse community backgrounds, would act as pillars of mediation, prioritizing restorative over punitive measures, seeking paths towards reconciliation in lieu of retribution. Throughout these discussions, Evelyn contributed insights enriched with her own journey, imbuing policy with humanity, interlacing Amara's aspirations of inclusivity and fairness into every aspect of reform. Her courageous vulnerability transformed grief into galvanizing momentum, inviting others to take up the charge with integrity. By harnessing the force of collective mobilization, each initiative envisioned became embedded with potential. Amendments prescribed for a justice system long tarnished, policies centered on extensive community engagement and education programs holistically paired with legal frameworks, forming an evergreen landscape of equity and accountability. Elsewhere, through Evelyn's urgings, there was a push to enhance mentorship programs designed to lift youth out of cycles of disenfranchisement, offering vocational and educational pathways as alternatives to the pipeline of neglect and punishment. Amara's legacy lived strongly within these initiatives, each one a spark daring the darkness with identifiable intention. Across the country, Evelyn's advocacy gained traction. From lecture halls to macro-level conferences, her message reverberated. Our aim must be to restore dignity and create opportunities for humanity where once there was only injustice. Beneath balmy skies and vigilant starlight, the seeds of restorative justice began to grow, signaling not merely a transformation of systems, but the dawn of a cultural shift towards empathy and resolution. The tangible threads of Amara's influence, intensified through action, began to weave a new tapestry of cooperation and progress, inspiring generations unified in their quest for an equitable, reconcilable future. In this quest, Evelyn found hope, an intrinsic part of her as she navigated the spaces between personal sorrow and public advocacy. By straddling these worlds, she bore witness to the power of community uplifted by shared intent, a radiant testament that amidst grief lay the roots of profound renewal. As the movement fortified and the initiatives took shape, their convergence promised a new dawn where restorative justice, emboldened by collective will, heralded an era of actionable change and realized potential for all. And within this promise lay the enduring light of Amara Westfield, a beacon shining through the radial spectrum of advocacy, guiding them as they molded the pathways to a world not just hoped for, but possible. In the hushed corners of the Westfield home, Evelyn's reflections turned toward resilient hope as she crafted letters styled as open windows into Amara's visions that had been abruptly suspended, yet now saw life beyond her stolen breath. Each letter, written with the intent to inspire and propel action, was carefully penned to reach the hands of decision-makers poised to ignite change within their spheres of influence. Evelyn's correspondence was not that of a distant observer, but a mother whose grief had forged an unbreakable link with a resolve for justice that lived far beyond her personal loss. Her words were precise, heartfelt rallying cries underscored by the authenticity of Encounter a Mother's tenacity, intertwining with activist determination. On this particular morning, as soft sunlight meandered through the window panes, Evelyn paused amidst her writing and glanced at a black and white photograph of Amarone from her childhood, where innocent eyes sparkled with dreams undefined yet close to realization. This image cradled memories that urged Evelyn forward, just as Amara's adult trials and triumphs propelled her into the wider garden of nurturing change. Funding for a scholarship in Amara's name had received burgeoning support, testament to the strength of shared humanity. Contributions had streamed in from diverse corners, blessing the initiative with varied resources that confirmed people's investment not only in the memory of Amara, but in the potential for a new dawn for others like her. The scholarship created pathways for disadvantaged but promising scholars, especially those who had been marginalized and ignored. It granted them empowerment through education, transforming young lives as tangible legacies of Amara's story. Evelyn, along with Thalia and a devoted committee of educators and community leaders, became stewards of this burgeoning endeavor, selecting the initial cohort of beneficiaries with deliberation and hope. With every story shared by a scholarship recipient came the affirmation of Amara's influence. Letters filled with gratitude and aspiration spoke of dreams taking flight, each one echoing Amara's own ambitions. They were narratives of renewal, threading future successes onto the string of possibilities Amara had always believed in fostering. These youths, bright and determined, served as living monuments to Amara's legacy, a coterie of learners, ready to usher in change reflective of the educational and emotional investment entrusted to them. In conjunction with these efforts, Evelyn was drawn into forums and speaking engagements more frequently, lending her voice resilient and nurturing to public discourse surrounding restorative justice and transformative education. Her presence graced conferences, interactive webinars, and local events, bridging gaps between community aspirations and structural decision-making. At a citywide summit focusing on justice through empowerment, Evelyn stood before an audience comprising civic leaders, educators, and aspiring students, her words reaching them with a sincerity born of sorrow turned to service. "A dream is an important start," Evelyn articulated, carrying Amara's convictions into her delivery. "But actionable dreams, those that receive nurture, commitment, and resource, can transform not just individual lives but communities." Today, we continue Amara's work under this guiding principle. Her words settled over the audience with a quiet intensity, invoking introspection and determination in equal measure. The applause rose. More than a congratulatory response, it was an invocation, a recognition of a collective path being honed under their witness. In her quiet return home, as reflections of these gatherings mingled with the tranquility of personal space, Evelyn knew that she had become a vessel for this monumental journey. Each step taken, powered by the network of change enveloping them, crystallized the dream she safeguarded, the dream Amara had lived and passed on to resonate, undying, against the currents of time. Through the mosaic of advocacy imbued with influences from legislative debates to educational reforms to community revitalizations emerged a tapestry of hope sustained in continuity. It was a textured allegory depicting resilience, determination, and an unvanquished collective power, kindled by memory and driving the world onwards. Tomorrow held realms of promise, foretold by every life touched by Amara's legacy, a promise Evelyn perched in her heart as a radiant compass. With these strides, past and future converged, crafting their perpetual presence within every justice reclaimed, every life emboldened, and every dream that ascended into triumphant realization. In the sprawling tapestry of the nation, woven with the vibrant threads of activism sparked by Amara Westfield's legacy, political attention began to pivot towards meaningful action. The corridors of power, often slow to respond to the cries of the marginalized, now buzzed with an urgency to align public policy with the demands of those who had taken to the streets, screens, and sanctuaries in relentless pursuit of justice. This shift was palpable in the halls of Congress, where the air crackled with the electric potency of momentum. Lawmakers moved with newfound vigor, compelled by their constituents' insistence that Amara's story and the stories of countless others be the impetus for reforms long overdue. Senator Rebecca Albright, a stalwart champion of civil rights, found herself spearheading a pivotal initiative, the Westfield Act, a comprehensive legislative package aimed at overhauling law enforcement protocols and embedding systemic accountability. She stood at the helm of this movement, her convictions steeled by the letters that had flooded her office, each one a testament to the undeniable will of the people. In the stately chamber where policies were birthed through debate and determination, Senator Albright took to the floor. Her presence was commanding, eyes fierce with purpose as she outlined the bill that had become a beacon for those seeking change. The proposal featured sweeping amendments to police training and oversight, ensuring that racial bias training and mental health evaluations became mandatory elements, integrated into the core of law enforcement education. The chamber listened intently, a quiet intensity settling over the assembly as her words resonated through the historic space. "The time for complacency has passed," Albright declared, her voice unwavering. "We stand here today, not just with the memory of Amara Westfield, but with the responsibility to ensure that no more lives are cut short by prejudice and neglect." Her words ignited spirited debate, voices rising and falling within the chamber as senators grappled with the nuances and implications of the proposed reforms. Yet, despite the contention, there was an overarching recognition that change was imperative. Each senator, conscious of their role under the watchful eyes of a nation no longer tolerant of inaction. Across the city, grassroots organizations and advocacy groups continued to collaborate, employing strategic lobbying in support of the Westfield Act. Their efforts, coordinated with precision and passion, translated the ground-level fervor into dialogues that reached the ears of decision-makers, reinforcing the narrative that Amara's story was emblematic of a broader, unyielding struggle for justice. Simultaneously, in town halls and community centers, local leaders hosted forums to educate citizens on the potential impact of the legislation. Evelyn Westfield, drawn into these discussions by virtue of her unique perspective, became a voice of clarity and hope. Her presence grounded the dialogue, emphasizing that the pursuit of equality and justice extended beyond legislation. It was about cultural transformation and the hearts and minds of future generations. At one such gathering, Evelyn shared the podium with Senator Albright, creating a powerful synergy that engaged attendees, each word spoken reflecting a deep, shared commitment to enduring reform. "Legislation lays the groundwork," Evelyn noted, her voice resonant amidst the steady hum of the engaged audience, "but it's awareness and action on a community level that build the house of a just society." Her words echoed through the room, sparking discussions that persisted long after the formal event concluded, discussions fueled by determination to champion the Westfield Act into realization. As efforts intensified, the nation watched with bated breath. Their focus converged on the impending legislative session where the act would be debated and voted upon. Public sentiments oscillated between hope and skepticism, tempered by historical precedents that had often seen such initiatives stall amidst political inertia. Yet, there was a prevailing sense that this time was different, that Amara's story had carved into the public consciousness with an unyielding force, rendering apathy untenable. The nationwide call for justice resonated with a clarity that transcended politics, urging leaders to act decisively. In those pivotal months, alliances were forged across party lines, echoing the sentiment that justice neither wore a partisan badge nor adhered to divisive rhetoric. It was universal, powered by a collective refusal to allow Amara's sacrifice to fade into a statistic. As the legislative session approached, the Capitol stood as both a beacon of democracy and a stage for potential transformation. The air was thick with anticipation, driven by the whispers of what could be a promise that with every word, every vote, the nation moved closer a step forward in shaping an equitable future. Within the crucible of democracy, Amara Westfield's legacy had ignited a spark, setting forth a journey toward profound change, advocating for justice that protected, respected, and uplifted all. As the legislative session approached, tension hung in the air thick enough to cut, infusing every hallway, every office with the palpable urgency of impending change. The Westfield Act stood poised on the precipice of realization, a powerful testament to Amara's enduring legacy and the indomitable will of the people who refused to let her story fade into oblivion. Within the Senate chamber, the atmosphere was electric. Senators filed into the room, their expressions a mixture of resolve and apprehension, knowing the magnitude of the decision lying ahead. The gallery was packed with onlookers, activists, journalists, and citizens, every pair of eyes trained on the unfolding drama, waiting to bear witness to a moment that could signal a seismic shift in the landscape of justice. Senator Rebecca Albright took her place at the front, flanked by co-sponsors who had worked tirelessly to bring the bill to this stage. Her calm demeanor belied the fervor coursing through her veins, an unyielding determination to honor the memory of those taken by injustice, to ensure that the Westfield Act wouldn't be just a response, but a new dawn. Across the aisle, Senator Michael Sachs, known for his penchant for skepticism and a reluctance to embrace sweeping reforms without thorough examination, signaled his intention to speak. His demeanor was measured, his reputation for cautious deliberation preceding him. Colleagues, we are tasked not only with considering a piece of legislation, but with addressing the very fabric of our society, Sachs began, his gravelly voice cutting through expectant silence. This bill is ambitious. It challenges institutions ingrained in our national identity. But isn't that what progress demands of us? Acknowledging where we have failed and daring to change? In the gallery, Evelyn Westfield sat alongside Thalia, both women representing the heart and soul of the movement. They watched intently, each word from the senators echoing with the weight of potential, each gesture confirming that Amara's voice lived on through their actions. Evelyn's fingers traced the outline of Amara's locket resting against her heart, a silent pledge to her daughter that justice was within reach. The debate unfolded with the ebb and flow of impassioned rhetoric, interspersed with data and anecdotes that painted a stark picture of the necessity of change. Senators rose to speak, some invoking personal experiences of encounters with the justice system, others grounding their arguments in statistical disparities that spoke of systemic flaws. Every vote we cast today reverberates through the lives of those we represent, Senator Albright reiterated, her words resonating with the clarity of conviction. We have the opportunity and the responsibility to redefine what justice looks like in our nation. With each speech, the stakes crystallized not only for the legislative body, but for the onlookers who sensed the tangible promise of a reimagined future within their grasp. The gallery buzzed with hopeful anticipation, with held breaths and quickened heartbeats, as the rhetoric gradually gave way to the pivotal moment, the vote. As each senator cast their vote, the chamber was hushed, the only sounds the whispered acknowledgments of aye or nay, punctuating the quiet with their finality. Outside, the day waned into dusk, casting the Capitol in a golden glow, an apt backdrop for the historic decision unfurling inside. Finally, when the last vote was counted, the chamber erupted into a cacophony of reactions, the mix of emotion embroidering the moment with the gravity of history being made. The Westfield Act had passed, its journey from concept to law complete, a law inscribed by passion, necessity, and the indelible legacy of a woman whose life had become a clarion call for justice. The realization rippled across the room, through the Capitol, into the streets where crowds gathered, waiting breathlessly for the outcome. Cheers erupted in impromptu celebrations. Tears streamed down faces of those who had fought, hoped, and prayed. People embraced, strangers united by a dream realized, by change set into motion. In the gallery, Evelyn held on to Thalia, the significance of the moment overwhelming in its magnitude. At that moment, everything she had hoped her daughter's story would achieve crystallized into reality. Amara's light had not only ignited a movement, it had written a chapter in the history of Justice Zone that promised protection, accountability, and hope for generations to come. As Evelyn rose, a serene resolve blanketed her, mingled with profound relief. She caught Senator Albright's eye across the chamber, the two women sharing a silent nod of acknowledgement, a shared victory, transformative and unshakable. The streets of Washington, D.C. buzzed with celebration long into the night, a city alive with the rhythm of progress. Amara's name was chanted, celebrated, her story now entwined with the nation's legacy of justice and reform. Her mother, Evelyn, walked through this energized landscape, invigorated by a dream fulfilled, knowing that the path to justice was not an end, but an ongoing journey, one they would traverse together, fueled by the love and light Amara had gifted the world. As the jubilant echoes of approval faded into the bustling heart of Washington, the nation found itself at a reflective juncture, caught between the elation of progress made and the sobering acknowledgement of how much further there still was to go. The passage of the Westfield Act was a milestone, a luminary beginning. Yet it was clear the journey towards comprehensive justice remained both challenging and unfinished. In the weeks that followed, the country engaged in a nationwide conversation that permeated every corner of public discourse. From roundtable discussions on university campuses to town hall meetings nestled within small communities, dialogues flourished around the implications and expectations aligned with the fresh legislative changes. The air was heavy with introspection, a collective reckoning urging each person to envisage their role in this unfolding narrative of reform and humanity. Evelyn Westfield, once a woman embedded in quiet resilience within her personal grief, had evolved into a figurehead of advocacy and education. Traveling fervently across states, she spoke to diverse audiences, her message consistent and unfaltering, a charge to each listener to uphold the tenets of justice the Westfield Act sought to instill. At a summit on societal equity held in Atlanta, Evelyn stood before an auditorium filled to capacity, her presence commanding, yet imbued with warmth and empathy. Her voice carried the gravity of lived experience as she addressed an eager assembly of activists, educators, and policymakers. "This legislation is not the end. It is just the beginning," Evelyn proclaimed, her voice strong, underscored by the depth of conviction. "The real power of this act lives within each of you, empowering change from the ground up, within systems and hearts." Her words resonated throughout the hall like ripples in a pond, evoking reflection and inspiring proactive planning. Many attendees nodded. Some took notes, each person processing the latent challenge buried within the encouragement that the responsibility of justice was as much personal as it was systemic. Marquez, a young community organizer driven by a fervor for restorative justice, rose during the Q&A session, his voice both inquisitive and assertive. "In passing this act, how do we ensure its promise transforms into tangible, everyday changes for those on the ground?" Evelyn regarded him with the practiced patience and optimism of someone who had spent countless hours in pursuit of advocacy. "We hold each other accountable and continuously educate ourselves. We push leaders, demand transparency, but most importantly, we foster empathy-building roads of understanding where once there were only barriers." This exchange sparked further discussion among the attendees, their mingling ideas forming a chorus that endorsed the interconnected roles each individual played in the wider network of change. The summit embodied not just a dissemination of information, but a proactive dialogue teeming with strategies and innovation to solidify the Act's foundational vision. Across the media landscape, voices resonated with newfound vigor, each outlet exploring the Westfield Act in depth, contextualizing its potential impact and narrating its journey. Stories of those like Amarahu had sown the seeds of change through tragic sacrifice found permanent places in publications, ensuring they would not be consigned merely to temporal remembrance. Among legislators, the binding promise of collaboration fostered during the Act's passage carried forward, serving as testament to the possibilities when party allegiances were set aside for collective human betterment. Their efforts expanded further beyond legislation, venturing into realms of national education and reform programs aimed at reshaping societal cultures deeply rooted in antiquated preconceptions. Meanwhile, in communities across America, the act of solidarity and action began to mature into a shared ethos. Simple yet profound gestures underscored emerging connections, neighbors helping neighbors, schools developing curricula rooted in inclusivity and understanding, local leaders bridging dialogues between law enforcement and civilians with empathetic resolve. In homes like that of the Westfields, where the personal intertwined with the transformative, reflections of the past mingled with hopes for the future. Amara's room became a sanctuary of legacy, a space where Evelyn continued to draw strength, knowing her daughter's memory had anchored a pivotal transformation, a testament to what could be accomplished when hearts united in empathy and action. As the sun set over a landscape filled with the earnest tenacity of ongoing discourse, Evelyn stood by her window, watching as the horizon momentarily blurred, only to focus anew. She felt the unyielding presence of Amara's spirit beside heralding each beam of moonlight, whispering through the leaves with a gentle reminder that they must rise each day ready to reaffirm their shared promise, never ceasing in their journey towards a fairer, kinder world for all. Inspired and armed with the Westfield Act, the nation's ongoing conversation had translated hope into action, voices into vigils, and intentions into reality. Evelyn dared to dream once more, knowing that with each sunrise, a new opportunity beckoned to forge paths of justice as indelible as her daughter's unwavering resolve. Time, it seemed, had an uncanny way of shaping moments into memory, of etching circumstances with an indelible clarity that neither faded with distance nor softened with suppression. At the heart of this unfolding story was Amara Westfield, whose influence had transcended the margins of tragedy to carve out a place among the growing annals of social justice. In communities across the nation, As spring unfurled its colors in vibrant arrays, the echoes of Amara's impact reverberated through blossoming endeavors. Initiatives born from her story matured into enduring institutions, and the reverberating hum of activism ebbed into a melody of relentless compassion and tireless reform. One such endeavor was the Westfield Foundation, an enterprise dedicated to educational enrichment and community restoration. The Foundation's offices, nestled within a refurbished community center, became a beacon for strategic innovation, bridging gaps between opportunity and potential, reality and aspiration. Inside the sunlit rooms, Evelyn Westfield moved with a sense of purpose, wielding her duties with the quiet strength she had garnered through years of persistence and resolve. The foundation was a blend of Amara's dreams and Evelyn's tenacity, a partnership manifesting in endeavors that transformed individual potential into collective bloom. Maya, ever the stalwart advocate, was present too, her energy an unwavering current that invigorated every meeting, every decision born from brainstorming sessions with the Foundation's board. Today, we announce our new collaborative initiative, Maya declared to the gathered group, whose enthusiasm painted the room with anticipation and readiness. The collaborative initiative aimed not just to provide scholarships, but to nurture mentorship programs that paired youth with seasoned advocates and professionals across various fields. From science and technology to the creative arts, the initiative mirrored a kaleidoscope of pathways Amara had envisioned for future generations. Evelyn joined Maya at the podium, the duo representing the movement's past and futura continuity steeped in intimacy and shared vision. "This isn't merely about providing opportunities," Evelyn added, her voice firm yet warm. "It's about shaping environments where dreams are cultivated into realities, where every story is given space to thrive." The words wrapped around the audience in warm embrace, sparking applause and adventurous dialogue among attendees eager to contribute. The room buzzed with ideas, with actionable steps that resonated with heartfelt sincerity and earnest collaboration. Meanwhile, across the nation, the Westfield Act continued reshaping the landscape of accountability. Local departments embarked on transformative journeys, channeling their efforts into the wholesale examination and renewal of law enforcement practices. Training curricula evolved to embrace cultural competence and empathy-focused strategies that engaged rather than alienated communities. Efforts paid dividends in communities that historically faced challenges instilled by decades of mistrust and marginalization. Volumes of updated training manuals and enhanced oversight processes symbolized progress, mirrored in the gradual yet evolving climate within once disparate precincts. Instances of brutality that had colored so much of the past were critically addressed with newfound transparency and dedication to ethical enforcement. The tremors of reform began knitting themselves into the fabric of local governance and beyond, aided by sustained public awareness campaigns and continuous dialogue forged within neighborhoods and municipal boards. The Act's passage had been just the beginning, and now its maturation continued to take shape through an ongoing blend of introspection, reformation, and reaffirmation. The movement ignited by Amara's legacy transformed into a mosaic of vibrant energies dedicated to the pursuit of a world more just and equitable, a dimension previously thought unreachable, now inching into possibility through the collective resolve stitched into every initiative and shared sentiment. Accompanied by the warmth of the sunlit spring, Evelyn reflected on the tangled landscape through which they had traveled, a landscape where vulnerability and courage coalesced into an extraordinary blueprint for change. The achievements were profound, even against the backdrop of the immense loss that continued to shadow, yet they shone with a vitality only seemed feasible through unity and relentless perseverance. Here, against a new horizon, conversations once whispered in quiet circles emerged into symphonies of fruition in classrooms, civic forums, and policy meetings, each crescendo further realigning power with the promise of fairness. Looking over the blossoming pathways Amara's story had carved open, Evelyn allowed herself a moment of repose. The rhythmic heartbeat of the foundation pulsed with innovation, and she sensed the gentle whispers of her daughter through every endeavor pursued, every life life impacted. Indeed, the shadow cast by Amara's absence had guided them toward a sharper clarity, a journey where grievance had given way to hope, and hope sewed itself into the fabric of future. Through this sojourn, her voice emerged as an enduring testament to the capacity for love to transcend all, crafting spaces where justice thrived, opportunities abounded, and her light remained steadfast and eternal. As the seasons continued their relentless march, the world around Amara Westfield's legacy adjusted, bit by bit, transforming into a space more reflective of her dreams. In schools and civic centers, offices and neighborhoods, conversations about bias, equality, and systemic reform became common necessary threads woven into the fabric of everyday life, spurred on by the foundations laid by Amara's story. In a modest middle school tucked into a lively suburb, a group of students sat in what used to be an ordinary classroom. Once filled with the predictable hum of adolescent routine, it now thrummed with the vibrancy of young minds engaged in a transformative program inspired by the Westfield Foundation's outreach, the Allies in Action initiative. This program, rooted in empowerment and understanding, invited students to explore themes of empathy and equity, challenging them to redefine what justice means in contemporary contexts. The classroom walls bore witness to colorful charts and thought-provoking quotes, each a testament to an ethos rapidly gaining influence across educational spheres. Miss Rivera, a dynamic educator dedicated to the evolving role of teachers as facilitators of change, stood before the diverse assembly of students. Her teaching transcended traditional curriculum. It embraced storytelling, nurtured critical thought, and most importantly, cultivated empathy in a world hampered by historical divides. "What makes a hero?" she asked the class, her tone imbued with genuine curiosity. "Is it a cape, superpowers, or can it be something much more profound?" Her students, eyes bright with the passion of discovery, leaned into the discussion. Juan, a thoughtful seventh grader known for his incisive questions, hesitated before speaking. "Maybe heroes are people who don't give up when things feel tough. Like Amara. She's like a hero because she helped everyone see what was wrong." Miss Rivera smiled, Juan's reflective consideration a highlight of the ongoing journey. "Exactly, Juan. Real heroes inspire others to be better, to see challenges, and confront them with courage and kindness." The class discussed the societal superheroes whose legacy transcended achievements, drawing inspiration from figures throughout history who had shaped the tapestry of justice. Amara's name was among them, woven between well-known faces and those still emerging into the light, embodying the enduring capacity for change embedded within singular and collective stories. In a corner of the room, a display dedicated to Amara's legacy captured snapshots and quotisa microcosm of her lasting impact. A photo of Evelyn speaking at a recent summit adorned the board, her dignified presence a portrait of resilience, supporting an enduring narrative of renewal and strength. As the class delved deeper into discussions, broader lessons about social justice communicated through multilingual texts and community projects brought them perspectives as diverse as the vibrant faces surrounding Miss Rivera. Each student was invited to contribute their perspective, contextualizing history's echoes in their own lives, challenging misconceptions, redefining futures. Meanwhile, in schools across the country, similar initiatives sprouted, supporting a more sweeping change prompted by the shifting narrative around equity and justice. By fostering an environment where young minds were challenged to think beyond Silvesto, embrace the interdependence of society, the seeds sown by Evelyn and her allies began taking root, preparing the next generation to leapfrog the constraints that had shackled progress for so long. Beyond the school's boundaries, community efforts mirrored the program's success through partnerships with local leaders and civic forums designed to engage broader audiences. The Allies in Action initiative catalyzed intergenerational dialogues, spanning kitchen tables, town squares, and cultural centers, each conversation replete with the echoes of Amara's influence. As these efforts blossomed, Evelyn continued her journey as a tireless advocate, a guiding presence throughout the network of change, unwavering in her resolve to preserve Amara's light. Her commitment to her daughter's enduring impact enabled her to tap into the resilience of a nation ready and eager for transformative growth. Within these classrooms and beyond, new chapters formed, animated by a movement that cherished the past but remained firmly rooted in the momentum of what could be. With each step forward, Amara's influence fortified trajectories once impeded by apathy. Her memory inspired introspection that challenged complacency and drove towards the dynamic possibilities gift-wrapped in the fabric of equitable futures. Amidst the sunlit landscape, Miss Rivera's class closed the session by crafting their definitions of what it truly meant to be a hero. Each student's words settled into the annals of personal growth, inviting them to contemplate their potential influence on a world waiting to be reshaped. And as they walked out into the corridors of their future, they carried with them the legacy of Amara Westfield, a legacy not bound by the past, but unyielding in its promise and endless in its potential. As the sun set, bathing the cityscape in the warm hues of evening, Evelyn Westfield sat in quiet contemplation at her kitchen table. The room was filled with the scent of blooming lilies, Amara's favorite, creating an atmosphere of tranquility amidst the whirlwind of change that had become Evelyn's everyday reality. She sifted through letters scattered across the table, testimonies from students, educators, and community members who had been touched by the initiatives inspired by Amara. Each letter was a piece of the larger mosaic of impact, evidence of the profound connections Amara's legacy continued to forge. One letter from an 8th-grade teacher in a small Midwestern town stood out. The teacher described how the Allies in Action curriculum had not only transformed her classroom, but had also united the community. Parents, initially skeptical, soon rallied to support school initiatives that echoed the principles of justice and empathy their children learned and brought home. Evelyn smiled, the teacher's words affirming the path they had charted, a path where education molded compassion into action, where communities found common cause in their shared humanity, diverging from division toward unity. The very essence of what Amara had envisioned was unfolding across landscapes, both rural and urban, far from and yet so close to her home. Her thoughts drifted to her journey, both as a mother and activist, stewarding Amara's legacy. Evelyn's heart swelled with pride at how the resonance of her daughter's story had evolved into an anthem for justice, equality, and change that transcended geographic and cultural lines. The once small and personal story of grief and hope had catalyzed a narrative of national transformation. Resting her eyes, Evelyn became lost in memories, the intimate recollections mingling harmoniously with the broader impact she was ensuring through her advocacy. She could almost hear Amara's laughter, see her vibrant presence filling the room, her legacy now extending beyond mortal existence. It was a comforting embrace, reassuring Evelyn that while Amara's life ended abruptly, her influence would ripple through time immemorial. Just then the phone rang, pulling Evelyn back to the present. It was Maya, whose enthusiasm for every small victory mirrored Amara's enduring spirit. "Evelyn, have you seen the latest news?" Maya's voice buzzed with excitement. "The Westfield Foundation has been nominated for the National Medal of Citizenship and Service." For a moment, words eluded Evelyn, her mind captured by the scope of recognition this implied. "Oh, Maya," she finally breathed, her voice rich with emotion. "What an extraordinary testament to all that we've accomplished together." Maya continued, "This isn't just about us, Evelyn. It's for everyone touched by Amaran acknowledgement of her lasting impact." The nomination was a prestigious honor, highlighting the dedication and effectiveness of the Foundation's efforts in championing educational reform and community engagement. It was a validation of collective commitment, reinforcing that with determination and unity, societal constructs could truly be reshaped. This news spread rapidly through the community, igniting a new wave of inspiration among those who had long supported the Foundation's mission. School boards and civic councils nationwide highlighted the achievement, engaging in renewed dialogue about the necessity and promise of transformative justice. It underscored a crucial point. Change, while slow, had to be persistent and was undeniably possible when nurtured by unwavering commitment. The next few days were a celebration of Amara's life and legacy, with events honoring the award spreading messages of hope and perseverance. Scholars related their experiences of empowerment, recounting personal journeys that had been indelibly shaped by the Foundation's efforts. Evelyn, addressing a gathering at one such event, spoke with heartfelt sincerity, her expression a tapestry of pride tinged with the enduring melancholy of loss. Through trials and triumphs, we become more than we were alone. Thank you for embracing Amara's dreams. Each journey, shared today, is her eternal legacy." The room responded with applause, a thundering ovation, echoing beyond brick and mortar into the hearts and minds of those committing to furthering the journey. It was a symbolic journey beyond the individual, one crystallized into the movement for a fairer tomorrow. As dusk turned to night and stars adorned the skies in shimmering constellation, Evelyn sat under their watchful gaze. Each twinkling light served as a beacon of hope and a reminder reflections of potential and the sparkling dreams Amara once held dear. The horizon of change stretched assuredly before them, propelled by the light of those who believed, by the stories from voices newly elevated. Evelyn leaned back, embraced by the night's tranquility, heart renewed with a profound understanding. Amara's voice had become a part of the world's song, drumming forward into infinite measures of progress. Here, beneath the celestial glow, lay the realization that their journey was not over, but just beginning. A promise held steadfast, a legacy of inspiration, and a future full of possibilities unbound. As the momentum of the National Medal of Citizenship and Service nomination propelled the Westfield Foundation further into the public eye, the sense of possibility grew palpable, infusing every aspect of the community with a renewed drive for transformation. The award became a point of pride, not just for Evelyn and those who directly benefited from the Foundation's initiatives, but for communities everywhere who saw in it a reflection of their own struggles and triumphs. In the following weeks, Evelyn found herself at the epicenter of an outreach tour that took her from coast to coast. Each stop was a microcosm of the broader narrative, a chance to connect with those inspired by Amara and to reinforce the evolving network of changemakers committed to reimagining justice. In a bustling conference hall in Los Angeles, Evelyn addressed a packed audience, which included educators, policymakers, and community leaders. The energy of the room was vibrant and anticipatory, the conversations threaded with a determination to harness the Foundation's recognition for broader societal impact. "Real change does not happen in isolation," Evelyn told the attendees, her voice unwavering. "It is built by communities who dare to dream together, driven by a shared commitment to leave the world better than we found it." Her words, born from personal sacrifice and a mother's enduring love, resonated deeply with those who had gathered. They were inspired by her resilience, enticed by the collective impact of the Foundation's work, and determined to be part of the continuation of Amara's legacy. Throughout the tour, Evelyn engaged in dialogues that reached beyond supposition to practical application. Workshops were conducted on integrating social justice into educational curricula, while seminars explored restorative justice methods that communities could adopt and adapt to their unique needs. The dialogue extended far beyond the ivory towers of academia and governmental chambers, spilling into local cafes, living rooms, and community centers, each a crucible of raw potential and shared humanity that Amara had envisioned. In New Orleans, a diverse group of community organizers and artists hosted a cultural evening in honor of the Westfield Foundation's work. The event was filled with vibrant music, spoken word, and visual art installations, all celebrating the power of community resilience and creative expression as tools for change. On the makeshift stage, a group of high school students performed a powerful dramatization using excerpts from Amara's writings passages laden with hope and a call for collective empathy. Their performance was met with thunderous applause, a testament not only to their talent, but to the enduring impact of Amara's voice. Evelyn watched from the audience, her heart swelling with pride. It was clear that the Westfield Foundation's initiatives had planted seeds of hope and empowerment, seeds that were flowering into action in ways that extended beyond her initial vision. Each new connection fortified the scaffolding of an enduring movement. Meanwhile, across the nation, the ripple effects of these efforts found continuation in unexpected corners. Law enforcement agencies and community groups, previously at odds, initiated dialogues facilitated by lessons from the Allies in Action initiative and backed with practical support from the Westfield Foundation. The national discourse on justice reform deepened, buoyed by these local transformations. The incremental yet impactful adoption of new protocols and educational tools signaled a shift, a burgeoning redefinition of justice, characterized by collaboration rather than confrontation. By the end of the tour, Evelyn had forged countless friendships and partnerships, her network now a robust tapestry of diverse individuals and groups committed to pushing forth Amara's vision. The potential for renewed applications of justice extended far and wide, nurtured by shared stories, challenges, and successes. Returning home, Evelyn reflected on the breadth of the journey, aware that though much had been achieved, the path forward still beckoned. The intricate layers of justice and equality required ongoing diligence, adaptability, and above all, courage to challenge the status quo continuously. Sitting by her window, a cool breeze mingling with the early twilight, Evelyn felt a calm certainty that their collective efforts mattered. Amara's legacy, woven through each step of progress, served as the steadfast lighthouse, guiding them through the uncharted waters of tomorrow. The Westfield Foundation stood as a pillar of what could be accomplished when humanity, heart, and hope intertwined. With this realization, Evelyn embraced the night, comforted by the knowledge that together, they were painting a future Amara would be proud of, a future luminous with possibility and steeped in the enduring power of love. As the dusk of another transformative day settled into the comforting embrace of night, the Westfield home exuded a serene warmth, akin to a safe harbor amidst a bustling world. Evelyn sat with her small team in the cozy living room, the atmosphere rich with quiet celebration and introspection. They had gathered to reflect on their journey, to honor the milestones achieved, and to gaze toward the future with renewed vision and tenacity. Candles flickered gently around the room, casting softly dancing shadows that seemed to echo the lively discussions and laughter that had filled the space hours before. The glow illuminated Evelyn's face, lined with both the depth of sorrow and the light of enduring hope, a duality born of a journey that had transformed the essence of loss into a fountain of life. Evelyn's voice was level yet deeply resonant as she addressed her friends and collaborators. Tonight, we honor the legacy that has connected us all, a legacy not just of remembrance, but of active transformation. Amara's dreams lead us here, and they guide us forward. Beside her sat Thalia, her ever-present companion in advocacy. Thalia nodded, her thoughts mirrored in the silent concord shared among those gathered. Our work has just begun, Thalia added softly. Each change inspires another. We've ignited something much larger than ourselves. The group reflected on the breadth and depth of progress, noting the bridges built in Amara's name between her core values and burgeoning policies, initiatives, and individual transformations. Each story shared affirmed their journey, adding strength to the collective resolve that powered them. As the conversation tapered into a comfortable silence, they let themselves be still for a moment. It was a pause, filled not with emptiness, but with the profound satisfaction of striving toward justice, a goal as weighty as it was invigorating, underscored by the belief in its indispensability. Outside, the world continued its rhythmic cycle, the night's embrace cloaking the town in tranquil slumber. Yet, within this peaceful veneer, minds were alight with dreams kindled by Amara's legacy. The Westfield Foundation's message had taken root in communities across the nation, evolving into an organic testimony to the limitless possibilities of unity and perseverance. As Evelyn gazed out the window, she couldn't help but feel the presence of her daughter in every star, twinkling through the vast darkness. Amara's laughter echoed in her heart, a soundless melody vibrant with battle cry and lullaby all at once, urging them forward. "And where do we go from here?" asked Maya, her question hanging in the velvety night air, a gentle prompt for collective visioning. Evelyn turned to face the group, her smile serene and full of wisdom accumulated through trials borne and overcome. "We continue," she replied softly. "With every step, we honor Amara and her vision by refusing to let her light dim. We carry forward her spirit, illuminating pathways for those who come next." This sentiment, profound in its simplicity, encapsulated the essence of their journey, a journey that had already transformed lives and institutions, breaking barriers one determined effort at a time. The night wore on, enveloping them in its hushed wisdom, with each person aware they were stewards of a movement for which Amara had become the guiding light. Their work stretched beyond regional boundaries, reaching into minds and hearts open to the promise of equity and belonging. Finally, as the evening drew to a tranquil close, the conversation shifted to whispered dreams and shared aspirations, each word a brushstroke painting the canvas of a future they were constructing together. And when their gathering dissolved into quiet farewells, each heart was imbued with the luminous vision they carried, the vision of a world redeemed by compassion, stewarded by empathy, and inspired by the steadfast legacy of Amara Westfield. The Westfield home, now still and silent in the midnight hour, stood as a testament to the authenticity of their mission. Outside, the world beyond hummed with life, busy with endeavor and possibility, poised to embody the change they had dared to dream. And in the whispering voice of the night, one could almost hear Amara, a part of the cosmos, gently reminding them, the work isn't done, but oh, the gifts of what's begun. What part will you play in shaping the legacy of justice and hope? If Amara's story moved you, consider sharing it and joining the network of change by subscribing to our channel. Together we stand stronger, reaching further, illuminating the future with courage and resolve. 1.